toolbox and drag them on here. We can just paste them in and such. So now we've got some labels on here. And the first thing I'm going to do, of course, because by default auto size is turned on, is I'm going to highlight all of our labels. And you can do that by holding your control key and clicking on each label individually. Or you can actually, if they're in a host control such as they are here, you can click inside of the group box and then click again, hold your click down, and draw a rectangle around them, or draw whatever you want, draw a box around them. You can do that to select controls within a container. So let's do that. Let's select all of our labels here, and let's head up onto the properties. And you can see you can set properties for multiple controls as long as they, number one, share that property, and number two, it isn't a property that must be set specifically for that control, such as the name property, right? They all share name properties, but they all need a distinct name, so that wouldn't work. But they do all have the auto size property here, so we're going to go ahead and change that to false. And you can see now all of our labels are of different shapes and sizes and such. Another thing I want to do here is just change the text alignment here to middle right. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we need to take these labels and make them all the same size, line them up with our text boxes. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is use the layout toolbar. So the first thing I want to show you with the layout toolbar is how to work with the size of controls, how to take the manual part out of manually by hand sizing your controls to make them the same size as other controls. I'll show you how to take that right out of the picture so you can do this automatically. And one way to do this, let's say that we want all of our labels to be the same height as our text boxes. We're going to eventually have our labels right next to our text boxes so they're the same height. The text of the label lines up exactly in the middle of the text box, and everything looks clean and accurate. So what we're going to do is first click on a text box. That's the kind of your model control, the first one that you click on. Any other control after that is going to take its properties from the initial control, in the text box in this case. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that all of these label controls are the same height as our text box controls. That's why you can pretty much pick any text box you want here because they are all the same size. But now what we can do is come up and use our layout toolbar, and there's 3 buttons that'll work with sizing. We have our make same width, make same height, and make same size, which does both height and width. So if we click on make same height, what it's going to do is take all of our labels and make them the same height as our text box, right? Pretty simple, easy to do. And again, what's nice about it is you can do that on multiple controls. Now let's say that we want to actually make our label here the same width as our other labels. Well, first let's go ahead and just click on the label that we want to model it after, label 2, and then we'll click on label 1, and now we can choose make same width, and there you go. Now label 1 is the same width. So that's how you can work with the sizing controls, pretty easy to work with. Now the next thing I want to show you is how to align controls. For instance here, let's say that we want the label's top portion to be equal to the text box's top portion, right? They're y coordinates. So what we're going to do here is click on the text box first, and then the label, and now you can see these first 6 buttons here, these groupings of buttons. What these are going to do is align the controls depending on what you want to align. So if you want to align their left coordinates, for instance, say that all of our labels were off a little bit here, I'll do this, and we'll put label 4 over here. Say we wanted to model after label 4. What we can do is choose label 4, then all these labels, and hit align left. Boom, look at that. All of them line up perfect now. Right, so there's one way to do it. Now the next thing we want to do, as I mentioned, is align our tops here of our controls. So we'll click on the text box, click on the label, and now over here are going to be your tops, your middles, and your bottoms. And over here was your left, your centers, and your rights. So if we hit align top, it's going to make our label at the same y coordinate as our text box, right? Pretty slick. So now we can do the same thing with label 2 here in its text box. We can align the tops. Same thing with 3 in its text box. Align the tops. And finally 4, align the tops. There we go. So now all of our labels are lined up directly with our text boxes. Another thing we want to do here is actually align the spacing. So hopefully this label is right next to the text box. And what we can do then is pretty much choose our label first. We'll say we like where the label is. We want to move the text box over there. Then choose our text box. And that's what this next set of buttons is going to do. This is going to increase, decrease, or remove the horizontal spacing. See that? If we hit remove, boom, it's going to pop them right next to each other. If you don't like it that close, you can increase it a little bit. Right? Look at that. Keep increasing it. You can decrease it. Or, as I said here, we can remove it completely. Right? And that's what I did. I just hit remove there because it looks pretty good like that. So now we'll do the same thing for this text box. We'll go ahead and remove it entirely. Same thing with our third one here. Remove it. And fourth one. Remove it. So it takes all the guesswork out. And now you can see it's a little high up there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to highlight all of our controls. I'm just going to hit the down arrow a couple times on my keyboard. And everything lines up pretty good there. Maybe we could even go one more time in there. There we go. Now the reality here is that all of these labels they're not going to have the same number of characters in them, so they're always not going to line up like this. So what you probably want to do here is leave yourself a little space, and we can do that just by highlighting all our controls, all our text boxes. We'll move them over a little bit here to give us some room, and then what we'll do is we'll take our first label and size it accordingly, right? So and then of course we can do this. We can just click on our controls and we can remove the vertical spacing entirely here. Oop, actually horizontal spacing. There we go. Remove it entirely. Now we can click on our label, highlight all of our other ones, and now we can of course make this the same width as we saw before. There we go, like so. Another thing we'll want to do here is then now we can use this to align the lefts. So we'll click on our first text box here. Now we'll align our lefts up. And there we go. So now we have some space here for varying text amongst here. And that's what's always nice about right aligning your text too, is now they'll always line up here on the right hand side, and they can be of varying sizes. Now let's go ahead and work with one more control here. Let's grab it into our toolbox, grab a checkbox, and drag this onto our form. And you can see we'll use the snap lines here to line it up to the top. And you can see it's actually not quite lined up in center with our text box here, and that's because the checkbox is a little off center itself. You can see there's a little white space underneath the checkbox and a little less above the checkbox. So aligning the tops here actually won't look right. If we select these and choose align tops, you can see it already is aligned. It doesn't quite look right. So in this case what we want to do is we want to center the checkbox into our text box. So what we can do is align middles. And now, and actually we chose our checkbox first, so that's why I aligned the text box. We want to choose our text box, then our checkbox, and now align the middle. And look at that. So now our checkbox is perfectly aligned in the middle of our text box there, and that looks much better. So that's just little things like that that you'll learn along the way. Another thing I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add another control in here. Why don't we throw a list box in here? We can find a list box. There it is. We'll drag that onto here. We'll go ahead and size this one accordingly. Here we go, and we'll just use the snap lines to get this one to work. Like so. There we go. Now we have a list box, right? And you can actually see the list box is a little funky to work with sometimes because it's got fixed heights on it. You can't actually, this one we wouldn't be able to line up exactly, even if we messed with it a little bit on the location or on the size property. Say for instance we wanted this to go just a little bit bigger, 70. You can see if I type in 70 and hit enter, it actually switches it back to 69. It's kind of an older control, and it's based on its items. That's why I like to use list views. So let me delete this out of here, because they can be just as good, most of the time even better. They can do everything a list box can do, and then some. So we'll drag our list view on here. We'll line it up and size it accordingly here. We'll just use our snap lines to line that one up, and you can see we can do that pretty easily, like so. And there we go. Right, everything lines up pretty good. Another thing I want to get on here are some buttons down here. So let's go ahead and get some buttons. We'll scroll up to the button on the toolbox, pop that in here. Now we'll copy our button, paste it. So now we have a kind of a save and or an accept and close button, if you will. And that's that. So now we have a simple interface designed using just some basic controls here, using our layout toolbar to line everything up. Everything looks lined up great, lined up evenly. We didn't have to do too much work on our buttons here. The one thing we could do, I suppose, is maybe decrease the spacing a little bit. So, there we go. Actually, it looked better before. Maybe we'll undo that. There we go. See, if you really want to get very fine on your spacing, you only want to do it just a little bit, you're probably better off just clicking on the button and using your arrow keys. So you can see if I'm hitting over here, I'm hitting right on my arrow key, it's going very, very minor as far as the distance is concerned. Where these buttons up here, the layout buttons, work on a much larger scale. So it's one thing I kind of wanted to show you there. So just keep that in mind. It's very easy to work with your arrow buttons to move them around at very small scale as opposed to using the layout buttons. Now, as I mentioned before, I wanted to show you just a little bit on smart tags. Most controls have smart tags on them, and that's what these little, when you click on a control, you get a little arrow above it. That just means you can click on it, and it'll show you common properties, properties that are probably used more often than not. And on text box, you have a multi-line, right? So you can make it a multi-line, make it span more than one line here. So you can make it, if I click on that and then drag the text box, you can see it's a much larger text box. Where if it's not multi-line, you can't size it beyond that. You can see the handles are gone. So that's one thing on smart tags. Controls like the list view have a big list of smart tag shortcuts here, because obviously it's easy to add some columns in here. So if we click on Edit Columns, you can see here are all of our column headers collection. Now I can add some columns on here, hit OK. And the other thing we need to do here is actually take the view and turn this to details. And now our columns will show up. See that? And now you can work with your columns inside of here by doing things such as sizing them and such. You'll still need to go back in here into our smart tag here, and you can also right click and also choose edit items, columns, things of that nature. But you can go into your smart tag for a nice quick shortcut if you want to change the name and the properties of each individual column. You can also edit the items, so you can add items within here, right? So here's a list view item, a couple of list view items. You hit OK, and now we should have some items in here. And actually, what that'll do is we need to go ahead and set the text of these items individually. So there are 3 list view items in there, even though you don't see them. What you need to do is add some text. So now we can say item 1. We will go to the second one here, item 2, and the third one is item 3. All right. So we'll and these, if we want to get items under these columns, they're called sub-items. And this is more of an advanced control. We'll touch on a little later. Just want to more or less wanted to get you familiar with these smart tags to show that it's a shortcut to commonly used properties. All right, moving on here. Let's go ahead and talk about how we can set up our form for writing code. Right. Let's say that we've identified all the places on our form that would be we would want to take an action when the user did something. Right. For instance, let's say that our list view here is kind of our summary control that has, lists all of our summary information about whatever. In this case, we'll say, since we're going to build a little SQL Server utility to monitor the uptime of our SQL servers, let's say that we have a list of SQL servers in here that just contains just basic information. Maybe our first column here will have the name of the SQL server. The second column will have the status, if it's online or offline. And then the third information will maybe have users connected or some form, something like that, right? Something simple. But you say that when the user clicks on an item, we want to go to the database, pull out some data, and fill up these controls with all the extra data, right? Maybe the IP address, just a bunch of extra information, the number of databases on it, maybe list out the databases on the server, and then of course maybe we have a checkbox here that says whether they want to track the status or not, right? And we're going to take this interface and believe me, we're going to involve it and make it do a lot more than what you just see here. But just to get started here, let's say that we want to, how are we going to do that? How are we going to accomplish that? Well, what we would do is we would trap an event on here. We would write what's called the selected index changed event, which would fire off anytime the user clicked on an item. That event would fire off. We would find out what item the user clicked on, and then go to the database, fetch the data for that item, and fill up these controls with all the extra information. Right? So that's kind of one way. Another way, of course, is a very simple example, is the button. User clicks on a button. We want to, maybe save all the data, because they're going to click on an item here, get the details, maybe change some things in here, maybe change, click the checkbox, turn it on or off for enabling this to go and fetch the status of a SQL server. So this would be the save button. So when they click on this button, the click event would fire, and it would go and save this information to the database, right? And of course, maybe this would be the close button. So when they click on this, we would close the application, things of that nature. And it's pretty easy to do. For buttons, you just double click on the button, and it'll write the skeleton code for us here, which is actually called the method signature, right? This defines the click event of the button, and it's actually shown here by the very end. The handles here means button1.click. So when a user clicks on that button, it's going to fire off the code in this event, right? Same thing, if I double click on the list view here, it's going to actually go into the selected index changed event, right? So things of that nature here. Same with the checkbox. If I double click on the checkbox, it's going to go ahead and take us into the check changed event. And these are called the default events for that control. If you click inside of here, inside of any one of these, you can see it's changing the actual name of the control that we're working with. And over here, it is pretty much a list of all the events the control supports. And the bold one here means that you have the signature defined in your code, right? So take a look at the button control. You can see there's a lot of events in here. We're going to cover some of the major ones here when we get into our control video and learn about all the different common controls and then the advanced controls. We'll take a look at a lot of these. But you can see the popular one here for buttons obviously is going to be the click event. Other ones are, drag over, dragging your mouse over. Actually, here you go, mouse leave, mouse move. These are good for if you want to make fancy buttons that, give the user visual cues when they move their mouse over it or when they leave it. Things of that nature. Mouse up, mouse down, mouse double click, things of that nature. And you can see there's a lot of controls. Again, we'll take a look at some of the popular ones here, but just wanted to point that out there for controls. And again, for a form, same thing. If we double click on the form, it'll take us into the form load event. So these are all the things you're going to want to do right when the form fires up. A form also has a form closed event and a form closing event. If I scroll up here, here are these. So form closing means it's in the process of closing. Maybe you want to prompt them with a message box saying, hey, are you sure you want to close this form? And if they say no, we can cancel the close. Where form closed means it's too late, it's already closed. This is a great place to close database connections and do what we call